Early spring, Vostrum to Husn Fulk. I set off from Vostrum a week ago. The first leg of the journey to Danustica was uneventful enough. Oh, these southern lands are beautiful in the springtime, when wild mustard flowers bloom on the hillsides and villagers hawk fresh honeycomb. The best thing about travel is the chance to buy local specialties that I could never afford inside the city. I saw the usual travellers on the road and passed a caravan or two, but few troops, and heard few rumours of bandits or looters. When I passed Danustica and entered the Calradia wetlands, there was no one at all. I have never enjoyed crossing the Calradia. I feel so exposed on those spits of dry open ground between the lagoons, with nowhere to run if robbers come at you, and was hoping to stick close to an Imperial or a Sarai patrol, but there were none. No robbers either. Plenty of mosquitoes, but I had bought some sweetgrass from a Hussite peddler near Danustica and crushed it to rub it on myself, and so they did not bother me. I could also see flocks of flamingos wading in the lagoons, much closer to the road than usual, due, no doubt, to the absence of traffic. My approach once caused several hundred to take to the air at the same time, which was quite spectacular. I found out why the Calradia was so empty when I reached the Asarai frontier. The Asarai Sultan, Unkid, had little taste for war, but many of his emirs harbored grudges against the empire, dating back to the Calradian occupation of the Nahassa, and sometimes he let them take a slap at the imperial rump. Anyway, the Asarai, they had raided Policia, and Ragaya's Imperials, led by the Archon Oros Mestrakaros, had hit back hard. I could see pillars of smoke from Tamna and Shibal Zumar, and when I reached Husn Fulk, I found it under siege. All the bandits chased from the Calradia were lurking just beyond the Imperial watchfires, so I found an Imperial picket and bribed him to let me slip into their siege camp and stay with his tent mates. Attis was the picket's name. He was an archer. He and his 5 comrades were good company at first. They took my money, but shared their rations and their tent. Mostly I played tablet with them for half-dinar stakes. They mocked each other constantly. I was told that one of them used snot to wax his bowstring, apparently because he picked his nose from time to time, and they said Attis got terrible farts from cheese that stank up the tent, and so if they were out foraging, none of them would ever loot cheese, because their code obliged them to share it with him. I felt they were at the same time trying to make me feel comfortable and also show off to me how strong their brotherhood was, but then the conversation turned dark. They had plans for what they would do when Husn Fulk fell, and it involved a great deal of murder, torture, and atrocity. They had marched out of the empire as a squad of 8, but 2 who strayed away from the main group while looting Tamnu had been ambushed by villagers, and their bodies were found with nose and tongue cut out. My 6 new friends, out of loyalty and love for their comrades, intended to make a group of entirely unrelated townspeople pay. Anyway, I do not believe they had their chance to wreak vengeance on Husn Fulk. The second morning after my arrival, the camp suddenly erupted into activity. An Asarai relieving army had been sighted on the slopes above. It was big, and the Archon Oros decided to lift the siege. Attis and his companions packed up their gear and joined the muster. They told me to take care of myself. I waited a short while, and then, noticing that Husn Fulk had thrown open its gates so that the besieged could go out and gather food and fodder, I made a dash for the town. Once I was inside, I made for the Inn of the Brass Key, where the tavern keeper had broken out a cask of the local beer to celebrate the break-in of the siege. About 2 hours later, a rather ragged-looking man approached me and told me he was Yathib. He was, as Istiana said, a charcoal burner. He downed a mug of the beer, a slight sweet brew made from mashed dates, then opened up with a gush of information, mostly troop numbers and the state of preparedness of various Asarai castles, which I wrote down for him to send to Istiana. He was illiterate. I remarked that he seemed a very thorough agent for a charcoal burner, which I suppose was condescending, but he did not take offense. Next to servants and prostitutes, Yathib said proudly, charcoal burners are the very best of informants. The Asarai lands have few trees, and charcoal burners venture deep into the back hills searching for the acacias and tamarisks that grow in canyons. Because they are so vulnerable to robbers and wild animals, they form a tight-knit brotherhood to pass on information to each other. Yathib told me that Istiana instructed me to proceed to the house of one Safan ibn Nasu in Hubyar, which I will do. He says that Ibn Nasu is a merchant and a well-regarded patron of Hubyar's poets and entertainers, and that his house is a center of gossip, which makes the man a splendid informant. If I survive the journey, I should at least look forward to a well-set table and interesting conversation.